When it comes to heart rate training, I am absolutely team heart rate 100%. That said, I recognize that heart rate training isn't necessarily for everyone, and quite frankly, there are some things to consider, might call them pros and cons, when deciding whether or not heart rate training is something that you might like to do. That said, there are some pretty prevalent myths out there that simply aren't true, that maybe you've heard and might be turning you off on the idea of maybe really thinking about, really considering whether or not heart rate training might be right for you. In today's video, I'm gonna look at 3 of the more common heart rate training myths that exist and try to explain why once and for all, they need to be busted. So the first myth on the busting block today is the idea that progress with heart rate training is glacially slow. Now, to be clear, I'm not here to suggest that as soon as you jump into heart rate training, you're gonna see massive changes, massive progress. No. That is not quite how it happens. The fact of the matter is that when it comes to looking for progress and gauging how you're doing with heart rate training, there's very few, if any, major leaps and bounds. It's tortoise and the hare, right? It's slow and steady. So if you're gonna think about maybe jumping into heart rate training 10 weeks out, 12 weeks out from a race, I'm not saying that it's not gonna help you, but I'm also not saying that you're gonna see a massive difference on race day. Progress with heart rate training is incremental. It builds upon itself, and the longer that you commit to the process, the more progress you're going to see. I've been doing heart rate training for just over 5 years now, and quite honestly, the difference from 5 years ago to where I am today is night and day. That said, it's 5 years worth of night and days that have gotten me from where I started to where I am now. My progress has been very much like this. It's been gradual, it's been steady, but it's been gradual. So if you're gonna dive into heart rate training, yes, massive progress takes time. Does it build upon itself a little bit every day? I believe so. Does it build upon itself every day enough that you can see it one day to the next? No. Although I would make the argument that there are no training philosophies that make a massive difference from one day to the next, but I digress. So if you stick with it for a few months, you'll see some progress. If you stick with it for a few years, you'll see more progress. The longer you stick with heart rate training, the more apparent the progress becomes. But this idea that progress takes months or years to begin to happen is patently false. Next on the list of myths that need busting is maybe the most prevalent myth out there as it relates to heart rate training for runners. And that is the idea that if you commit to heart rate training, that means that you can never do any speed sessions, any track workouts, tempo runs, hill repeats, basically that any type of hard workout, speed workout is off the table as long as you are committed to heart rate training. And that, my friends, is once again false. When it comes to a heart rate training philosophy, there are absolutely times and places to go hard. The key to heart rate training, as far as I'm concerned, is intentionality of effort. Meaning, most runs, you're intentionally not going hard. You're intentionally keeping your heart rate in the desired zones, underneath a certain threshold. However you set your heart rate training up is up to you, but you're going easy. Like, that's the idea, building your aerobic base, keeping your easy runs easy. But when you go hard, whether you do that once a week, a couple of times a month, every quarter, whatever the case might be, depending on where you are in your training cycle, what your race goals and running goals might be, when it's time to go hard, it's time to go hard. If you're gonna do some type of interval workout, of course you're still gonna go hard, and guess what? Your heart rate is going to go above whatever zone you typically do your easy runs in, or above whatever threshold you have determined as this is my maximum aerobic level, because you're doing a hard workout. That's kind of the point. Now, are we doing hard workouts all the time? No, but guess what? In any good training philosophy, you're not doing hard workouts all the time either. So when it comes to heart rate training, again, intentionality is key. If it's an easy run day, keep your easy runs easy. If it's a hard run day, a hard workout day, then freaking hammer it. Whatever workout is on your calendar, from an easy run to a hard run to a race pace run to whatever it might be, execute that to the best of your ability. And on the days when you're supposed to go hard, go hard. The third myth that I want to address today maybe isn't as much of a myth as it is a misperception. Don't at me. That the heart rate numbers that matter are your average heart rate for the workout and not your heart rate at any given moment within the workout. and that is actually backwards. Your average heart rate for a workout, I mean, it might look good, but when it comes to heart rate training, we are worried about what your heart rate is in the moment and making sure that at every point during your workout, or at least as much as is absolutely possible, you're keeping your heart rate within your zone or below your threshold that you've set for yourself and not letting it tick above. If you know anything about math, you know that averages can be deceiving and you can keep your heart rate low for a while, have it spike a little bit at one point, and it doesn't really do much for the average, but it does affect the impact of the workout for you physiologically. So make sure that at every point during your run, you're keeping your heart rate in check as much as possible, which is another reason why it's important to get a heart rate strap and not just rely on the wrist monitor, which is nothing close to accurate at all. We've talked about this before, you know this by now, but it's my duty to remind you. So if you haven't checked out this video yet, do so. And just make sure that your heart rate stays where it's supposed to be throughout your workout. And that may mean you need to slow down a little bit towards the end of your run, but that's okay. So there you have it, 3 heart rate training myths that deserve to be busted. 1, progress with heart rate training takes forever. Not true, it's just slow going. 2, if you commit to heart rate training, you never get to go hard, and that's just not true. There's a time and a place for a hard workout. Just make sure it's intentional. And last but not least on the list today, 3, when it comes to heart rate training, we are not focused on your average heart rate. Instead, you need to be concerned and aware of what your heart rate is at any given moment during your workout and always striving to keep your heart rate within the desired zones or under the threshold limit that you've set for yourself. So there you have it. What other heart rate training myths, untruths, misunderstandings do you have? Let me know down in the comments and I'll do my best to address them for you in the future. But until next time, I hope you'll consider these heart rate training myths once and for all completely and totally busted.